Oh, this is weird. Alright. I'm going to make this a fast one. Yeah. This has just been on my mind. I mean, we just been past Remembrance Day, or Veterans Day. I've said it many times during the last 2 days, and put out my patriotic videos on Jay Canuck. And you can also find me on BitChute, same name, Jay Canuck. Anyhow, well, this is going to be short, but did our soldiers die for nothing? Now, before people, chop my head off for saying something like that, it's pretty simple. This is pretty simple what I mean by I'm saying that. You have to keep in mind the times they were living in. World War I and World War II was a pre-civil rights era. It was a pre-multicultural era. It was a pre-diversity quota era, and they were fighting for the freedoms they had, and freedom of speech, are the Judeo-Christian foundations, the freedoms they had in the beginning of the 20th century, and the freedoms they had in the 30s and in the 40s, what they knew, which is again prior to the diversity quotas, multiculturalism, and the civil rights movement, which Canada didn't really have a civil rights movement per se, unlike the States. But again, it's the same thing. It was a different world, right? So you look at today's society, and people are getting fired for promoting to wear poppies on Remembrance Day to honor the soldiers. And it's like, what on earth? So people are getting fired over, let's honor our soldiers by wearing poppies. There's that. But yeah, I mean, it's just historically, and I love history. History is awesome. This is why I love Canada. Our history is so amazing. We're, in World War I, we were an immigrant nation at that point. We were not born as an immigrant nation, though. We were, there was nothing to immigrate to, right? We were Canada, America were pioneers and settlers, which built the foundation to then have, in the beginning of the 20th century, they became immigrant nations. Most of the people I know came to Canada and America at the beginning of the 20th century. And so at that point, but again, there was no they had different freedoms. They had different rights than we do now. Now, you have to watch what you say. You have to watch what you say. Well, back in World War I and World War II, you had freedom of speech. You had freedom of speech. And in Canada, we didn't have a written Bill of Rights until the, I believe after World War II. But at least we had, it was inherent. We were bequeathed with the Commonwealth common law. So we had freedom, inherent freedom of speech. But we finally had a written Bill of Rights in Canada to enshrine, what we have, right? So, again, it was a different world. It was a different society, and that's all I mean. That's all I'm saying. Did they die? For it was a different world. A different time, and now it's almost as if we have less freedoms now than before. So that's what I mean by did our soldiers that we remember die for nothing? You know, if they saw our first war that Canada was involved in was the Boer War, so South Africa, and it was the Boer War we were involved with. And then we were involved in World War I, and that was what many said, that Canada was recognized as a nation in 1914. And what Canada contributed to World War I, and what we did, said that, again, I want to emphasize this again. It was a different world, pre-Civil War. Pardon me. Yeah. Back that up. Pre-civil rights movement. Pre-communist. World War I. And now look where we're heading. Look where we're heading. We're heading to Canada's becoming a Soviet state. We have hate speech laws. You have to watch what you say, or you'll get fired. This is what our soldiers died for hate speech laws. To be wary of government. To be afraid of to speak your mind. This is what they fought for? This is what I mean. This is what I mean. They lived in it's amazing to say that it seems like they were freer prior to, and now Canada didn't have a civil rights movement, but even in the States, they're kind of, heading towards the same way Canada is heading, but it appears to me, it seems they had a little more freedom, in particular us, during World War I and World War II and prior to now. And that's saying a lot. That is saying a lot, that they had more rights prior to the civil rights movement. That's crazy. But in Canada in particular, we didn't have a civil rights movement. But now, we don't have free speech. Right? In the sense of, there's so many things, now we're going to have there's just so many things that's on Justin Trudeau's agenda that is going to be making us even less free. And, there's nothing wrong, well, it's greater good, right? Well, hold a sec. Did our soldiers die in World War I and World War II for us to become just like the people who they were fighting against? They were fighting against Nazism. They were fighting against national socialism. They were fighting against then after World War II, fighting against communism. And this is where we're heading. This is, and then it's nuts. It's crazy. This is not what our soldiers died for. So this is what I mean. We honor them. Darn right, Don Cherry wear a poppy. At the very least, wear a poppy in remembrance when we had, they knew what they were fighting for. They knew they were fighting for what Canada stood for, what America stood for. It was Judeo-Christian, liberties, in the States, and they were fighting for, back then, they still had, God Save the Queen at the beginning of classes in school. In the States, they'd sing the American National Anthem, or the Pledge of Allegiance. They'd say that. Now it's all gone. That's what our soldiers were fighting for. That's all gone. Everything they fought for, everything they knew, and that what they were told that they were fighting for, is all gone. And now, the direction they want us, the green communism, right? Let's go communistic, is the best way to fight global warming. Whether you believe in global warming or not, it doesn't matter. It's the direction. While communism is the way to battle. So suck it up, Buttercup. You know, but let's, So I just don't. That's all I'm saying. It's just a simple question. Did our soldiers? It's sad. It's a sad state, and this is why I have all my patriotic videos that I've made for Canada and the USA. I did from Canada, the Americans, from Canada with love. I put that out the other day in honor of Veterans Day. I guess it's all going to be archival. Archive it. Remember what Canada and what the United Kingdom's I think has already done. I mean, they still haven't left the EU, which is again what looks so much like the Soviet Union, right? They still haven't done that. In Parliament, both sides voted Remain, and they still have their thumbs up their butt over the whole. Well, no, we don't. We want to, kick the can down the road, and not leave, and not leave, the EU. 17.5 million Brits voted to leave the EU, and yet, both sides of Parliament are going, no, we don't want to. And so, of course, this leads to the erosion of social cohesion. It's just going to break down the society. This is what our soldiers fought for in World War I and II? I don't think so. I don't think so. After World War II, the Soviets, they came in, and the Eastern Berlin, to East Berlin, and that boom, they built a wall, and Eastern Europe got a bad rap. First they were invaded by the Nazis, and we came in to help with America, and then we left them to the Soviet Union. Poland, all the way up to East Berlin. The second that wall fell, where'd all the communists go? They went into the system, right? They went right into the the institutions. That's where they went into. They went into the institutions, and they turned what was, what West Berlin was all capitalistic, it was free, right? All gone. The second that wall fell, that's where the communists went, into the institutions and rotted it from the inside out. Right? And so this is, again, this is in Flanders Field, where poppies grow, I mean, all those people who died, Canadians, Americans, French, I mean, you name the Allies. I mean, they're lying in Flanders Field, fighting Nazism, fighting National Socialism, and then we leave Eastern Europe to the Soviets. And what was a Soviet? It was this giant behemoth of a thing. And now what's the EU? What's the difference between the Soviet Union and the EU? Tell me. A bureaucracy in Brussels telling all these other countries in Europe, borderless, you don't need a passport, right? From Turkey to United Kingdoms, you don't need a what's a nation? It's right. So the whole idea of the nation state is dead, right? Um, Again, 2004 movie, 2004 Canadian-made movie. This actor writer Paul Gross, he caught it on in 2004, saying the nation state, playing a villain, Justin Trudeau-esque character, but as a villain, saying the nation, coming to the climax. Spoiler warning, by the way, spoiler. The nation state is dead. It drowned. And it's his job to tell everybody, and it's like this is what this is what the soldiers died for. No, it was again, like I said, it was a different era, it was a different time, prior civil rights movement. This is when children had prayers in schools. This is when they did the Pledge of Allegiance all the way up into the 50s. And then you had Marxism, economics being taught in universities and rotted our system within the inside out. From within. What was it? Abraham Lincoln who said, if a house divided will it can't stand. Or if, this is paraphrasing badly, but there was another quote saying that if we fail, it would be from within. I forget if it was Abraham Lincoln or if it was Jefferson, or I apologize, I'm not quite sure. But the paraphrase is pretty close, because that's what's happened. We have a conservative leader who has moved to the left. In Canada, we became socialistic. I know I'm moving fast because but we had a socialistic Canada thanks to Pierre Trudeau. He was a CCF member when he was younger, which is Canada's communistic party. They rebranded their party name to the New Democratic Party because of the CCF sounded too communistic. So, New Democratic Party is much better. Well, he became the leader of the Liberal Party, and he just took communist policies and put it in the Liberal Party. This is what our soldiers died for? To become a communist, for Canada and the United States, with the Squad, the Green New Deal, to become communistic, and have less and less freedoms. But hey, it's the greater good, have less freedoms. Well, at least we're, saving the planet for what? For what? We're all going to be living in, we're all going to be renting. I like to say it this way. Christmas is coming up. It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Potter. He wanted everyone to be renting in his squalor, and paying, the prices to live in Potter's apartments were astronomical. Well, this is what the leaders want. They want us all to live in Pottersville. That's exactly what they want us to live in, where we're all equal, living in the same trash heap, right? And so, again, this is not what our soldiers died for, and I'm sure they're turning in their grave. I am sure they're turning in their grave. Those who are alive, who are still alive, God bless them. I'm sure they're shaking their heads or they're crying. You're going, this is, saying, this is kind of corny to say, this ain't my Canada. This ain't my America. This ain't, I can't imagine what they're thinking in the United Kingdoms, where they've lost democracy. they have their thumbs up their butt going, well, 17.5 million Brits want to leave the EU, and they're going, no, we're not going to do that because we voted Remain. Come on. So anyway, I think I'm done my rant, really. But I'm a history buff. You just have to stop and think, what were our soldiers fighting for? And you have to think, well, what type of society were they living in? First of all, what was the common life, of Canadians and Americans in, 1900s and 1914? What was their daily lives? In 1930s, prior to World War II, what was their day? What rights did they have? What was their, what did they do? Well, they had prayers, and they had Christian prayers in schools. They had a Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of school. In Canada, they sang "God Save the Queen." Now we have hyphenated courses in education. They're being taught pornography at younger ages in kindergarten. And if you disagree with all these hyphenated courses, they get more and more perverted every year at a younger grade every year. You're a horrible person. This is what they died for? Nonsense. It's for people to be outed as awful people for having a different opinion. This is where we are. This is where we are as a society. You're a horrible person for not thinking the same way. We're right into 1984. This is where we are. We're in 1984. I somewhat say, I was born in the I think the 80s. There's no more humor, right? You can't get weight. You had some really good shows in the 80s, in the 90s. It was jokes. People had a spine back then. People knew what humor was. Jokes, not opinion. It was jokes, right? Fat jokes. Well, you can't do fat jokes now because of the sensibilities of people who are not very healthy. And whether it's genes or not, it doesn't matter. You cannot get away with jokes, that are just, pokes fun at people. Married with Children. Hilarious. It's funny. The main character picks on everybody. Not just one particular, but that mainly had a lot of fat jokes, but it was jokes against everybody. Can't get away with that today. Why? Why not? Our soldiers died. This is my point. Why not? Our soldiers died for the right of free. Well, shoot, if we can't have humor, if you're not allowed to laugh, think of that. If you're not allowed to laugh, you're not allowed, that joke is a little too risque. It's a joke. It's not opinion. It's to make people laugh. But we now live in this society where we're so easily offended. It's like, my God, this is what our soldiers died for? I'm sure they're crying. What's that whole, what the liberals say, this is not my president with Donald Trump? I'm sure they're going, this ain't my Canada. This is not the Canada I grew up in. I'm sure they're going, when I grew up, we had the, freedom of speech. We had, Christians were not, looked down upon. It was our countries that we live in, Canada, America, they were founded upon Judeo-Christian values. And nowadays, if you're a Christian, if you believe in the Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman, system that we live in, that the pioneers of our nations and settlers built, you're awful. You're a Christian? Oh my goodness, that's like the worst thing today. That, hey, my diversity, or my whatever, right? Anyway, I mean, honestly, this is what I'm talking about, Um, it's a different world. It's a different world that we live in. It's not the one that our soldiers died for, you know. Um, and when I see a soldier today, when I see a Canadian veteran, I want to shake their hand. See, I have a disability with my right arm. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. Yeah, I have a disability with my right arm. And, it doesn't matter. I go and shake their hand with my right hand, my left hand. Sometimes people kind of go, ooh, people kind of go, do I shake his right hand or his left hand? It's kind of funny. I shake their hand, they smile. It's like, God bless them, Or if they don't, if they don't believe in, they understand what it means. They get it. It's like, thank you for your service, right? It's like, just do that. You see a soldier, in America, thank them, right? If you see a soldier in Canada, thank them. Even today, even with, the rights that, I mean, what are they really preserving nowadays is just a husk, Hopefully it can be saved, our nation state. I really hope we can turn around this whole idea of a post-national state and how Canada or America have no identity. That really irks me when Trudeau said Canada has no core identity, no core values, nothing to assimilate into, so you end up getting ghettos, you end up getting, people who can't communicate with each other. Well, if you can't communicate with each other, you can't compromise, you can't find common ground, right? The whole diversity is our strength. Well, is it? Or is it the stuff we have, in common? That is our strength. The stuff that we can break bread with, where we can actually compromise and have common ground, and, it's easier to make friends when you can speak, your minds with each other without wanting to, to kill themselves, to kill each other. Is what I mean. They kill each other. But this is a society that we live in now. We live in a society where it's the breakdown of social cohesion. Diversity is the strength. Unity. The very idea of unity is a bad thing. The whole populism thing. Populism. What does populism mean? For the people. That's a bad thing. This is what our soldiers died for? Again, like I said, you look at what the world they lived in isn't the world we live in today. It is not the world. I like Errol Flynn movies. And there's an actress that was in a lot of Errol Flynn movies. I mean, think of this. It's 1930s, man. Right? So think of living in a 1930s America. The actress is still alive. Olivia de Havilland. She's she's over 100 years old. Think of that. Of all the things that have changed within her lifetime. How society was like in the 30s. How was society like in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Her witnessing all the changes. Going to the moon. These marvels. The computer. Right? Technology changes. Still alive. The co-star of all the Errol Flynn movies. Which I tend to go back and watch when I want to feel, when I want to turn my brain off. Watch some old Errol Flynn movies. She's still alive. Can you imagine? This is not. I'm sure she's scratching her head, going, "Wow." Again, pre-civil rights movement, and so you have. There, now it's still unity. There's actually something about they're going about Martin Luther King Jr. who wanted, and I want to live in a nation where I'm not judged by the color of my skin, by the content of my character, right? Merit. Well, I'm hearing from people, some groups in the States that's not from liberals. No, Martin Luther King Jr.'s point of view is the wrong view. Color is all that. It's not ideas. It's not merit. It's not content of character. No, we're in such a twilight zone. And, that's it. We're in such a twilight zone, it is not funny. How crazy things are today. Our soldiers who have died, just finish it off with Don Cherry getting fired for encouraging people to wear poppies on Remembrance Day. He gets fired on Remembrance Day. The Americans listening to me, Veterans Day. That's Canada's Veterans Day. And in the United Kingdoms and Canada, we wear poppies because of many died in Flanders Field. And so we wear the poppies on Remembrance Day in honor of those soldiers who died within. And there was a really heartwarming poem written by a Canadian soldier. So, no, and so he's fired on Remembrance Day, encouraging people to wear poppies, and this is the world we live in, man. Anyway, I'm gonna end it here. So again, I'll pose the question: did our soldiers die for nothing? Is this the world that they fought for? I don't know. I don't think so. But again, hearing you see a soldier, shake his hand. You shake her hand. Because my word, one last time, the soldiers who lived and died, there was no LGBT. There was no transgender issues. There was no multicultural, there was no gender quotas. There were no diversity quotas. There was a freedom of speech. It was a different world. It was a different world that had core values, core Christian values. They didn't, their skirts didn't, weren't a thong, weren't as small as a thong. It was a difference. Again, it kind of really is mind-boggling where we are and how we're almost becoming a society which our soldiers fought against. Our soldiers fought against. So, we'll see what happens. Canada might be splitting up. I hope it doesn't. But this Manitoban, I live in beautiful rural, Leeds, Grenville. The Thousand Islands area is gorgeous. Very conservative, born in the West. Seeing it, Peter Downing, and he's a veteran, so, God bless him, and it just saddens me where he, whacks it, but they deserve, listen, if you are living in the West, man, I get it. I hope we can reverse course and stick post-nationalism back where it belongs, in the trash bin. And get back to the nation state. Whether if Canada becomes a republic or we just find a way to change the electoral system to give the West more rights, I don't care. But it's just too sad. This is not what our soldiers died for our country to just absolutely split. But if they do, you cannot blame the West. You can blame Toronto and Montreal. You can blame our electoral, the abuse of our electoral system. That a lot of the stuff Justin Trudeau has done, and I believe he's going to try to rig again. But anyway, I'm going off topic. So, all right. So you all have a good one, and you all take it easy. God bless.